So I'd like to call to order the August 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Historic District Commission of Saugatuck. Could we start with call to order? And Sarah, would you help us with that? Or roll call?
Trigger.
Here.
Leo.
Here.
Canarza.
Here.
Donovan.
Here.
And Peterson.
Here.
Patterson, I'm sorry.
Right.
Billion times.
Yes. Just like me and Striker.
Striker.
We have a quorum. Are there any additions or changes or deletions to the agenda? Good to go? Okay, approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read the regular meeting minutes held on July 6th? And if so, is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve. Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Yeah. Opposed? Okay. Are there any public comments on any of the agenda items? Nope. No unfinished business, so let's go right to 333 Lucy Street. Hello. Welcome.
It's pretty straightforward, and I looked through the notes in the package, so we're gonna put it up on the.
What are you referring to?
333.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was sure you're talking the application or?
Nope, just the actual pictures. Because you guys pretty much covered, here are the fast bullet points. The original house, Maureen Hayes, 1868, it was added on to 4 years ago with a rather contemporary addition in the back that you can see. And all we're asking for tonight is you can see the front porch, which has sets of sliding doors all the way around on 3 sides. And I think we could go to the next picture. So that's what it looks like now. And what we're proposing to do go to the next one, is to replace those sliding doors with mullioned windows, which are kind of in keeping with the original part of the house. So they would be 3-dimensional inside and out, simulated divided lights, wood siding or composite to match what's on the house now, and a new set of wooden stairs and railings. And you can keep going. So that's what the elevations look like on the side. You know, again, this is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And then if you please go to the next. So that's what it would look like. And you can see kind of on the side of the original house, and you'll see in the next rendering as well, that there are traditional mullioned windows. So I think this is pretty much in keeping with the original house. And that's it in a nutshell.
Great, thank you. Go around the table and start this way this time.
No questions. I applaud this change, though. Oh, I've been waiting for this for as long as I've walked by that house. 20 years. Yeah, no, it's good.
Nico.
So simulated divided lights, is that what? We're good with that?
That's what we always.
And that's what we do.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
The name sounds like it's fake, but it's actually what we approve.
Not the clippings.
Correct.
Okay. No other questions.
No questions. Great improvement.
No questions. Thanks.
We have 5 original. But I know the part is really and then you start everyone. And I know.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the original windows?
The ones that are all.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Whole house, everything else.
Yeah, you would have to come back for a separate application, yeah. But we would evaluate the condition of those windows and if they're repairable or not. So in every one of those, if every one of those that you've seen, there's a specific instance of either they were repairable or they weren't. Maybe one elevation could be replaced, and another elevation couldn't. So it's all super dependent. But yeah. Yeah.
Those are windows on the sides.
There's one in the front.
Okay.
And then two on the other side, and then the other two you can't see. Because they're inside.
Oh, okay.
They're in the. They don't, you can't leave them all in the stick on their own.
Right.
They don't function at all.
I mean, I wouldn't discourage you from coming back and applying for what you want. It's just we would just need to look at the windows and look at how you see them from the street and the originality. You have a contributing structure, right?
Yeah.
So, my only comment was gonna be if you could submit a cut sheet for the windows, for the file, after we vote, later next week that would be great, because we just need to show that. Yeah, send that to Ryan, just reiterating that it is simulated divided light. And I echo what everyone else says. Two other comments. I love that you did 9/6. I think that's really smart, because that distinguishes new from old. Because the others are 4/4 or 6/6. We all just kind of made a comment. We remember when you came in before and you did the addition, and two things. That's a great example of new from old, distinguishing new from old, but it's harmonious. So we love your addition. And I remember saying to you guys at the time, are you gonna do the sliding glass doors? And you said you were gonna come back, so thank you. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, we'll bring our kill ones or something. Would anyone like to make a motion? There's a motion in our packet.
I'll make. I'll make a motion to approve the application to change the windows and redo the front porch as shown in the application.
Is it subject to showing the spec sheets on windows?
Okay. Oh, do you see something in there?
Just from the comment.
Also it talks about the porch.
Yeah, well, we have a motion on the table, so is there?
Oh,
You
can I
made a,
withdraw my motion?
why don't we second it,
Okay.
and then we'll discuss it, and then we'll reframe it.
Okay.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, discussion.
I'd like to revise my motion. And, I move.
The motion.
I think that's what you can bring up.
Right. So I move to approve the renovations to the structure at 333 Lucy Street, including the removal of 5 non-original sliding doors, installation of 9 double hung windows, installation of a side entry door, and replacement of the porch stairs in accordance with the plans and details submitted within the application materials. The approval shall be subject to the receipt of a cut sheet of the proposed windows.
Thank you. So you have that revision in the meeting minutes as the original motion. And the only other thing I would add to the discussion for that is, just to be consistent, Jeffrey, add a cut sheet for the siding. It says in your application that it matches in.
Width, height,
Yeah,
profile?
thank you. That's what I was looking for. That it matches in profile, but to be sure that it is smooth, not stamped. I know, but you'd be surprised. So just.
Did you just second for this? Second one?
No, we already seconded it, just amended it.
Okay.
So we're good with that. Okay, all in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate you investing in the property.
Oh, that's feels good. Not, I have.
Please help me understand.
Okay.
new versus
Thanks, Jeffrey.
old. Like,
See
this
ya.
is a great example. Like, when I was reading, I thought, oh, that's
Do-
what-
Yeah, totally agree with you.
Oh, that makes me happy.
Okay, the second item we have on the agenda is the waterfront initial assessment report. And I think, David, you're on the phone, right? Hello. Oh. Can you hear us? He went off mute a minute ago. While we're getting him back, I'll just tee this up. I mentioned to Ryan when I saw him the other day and to the Mayor Dean that this survey that was sent out, that I thought it was a little strange that those two surveys were sent out. And they included things in the historic district that, to my knowledge, we weren't even aware that there was a survey being done. And that, like, some sort of just intersection with the work of the Historic District Commission and acknowledgement of the guidelines, because what if that report comes back and people weigh in out of context with, I would love to see 1888 colonial everywhere. And, you know, the Historic District guidelines don't support things that might come out of that. And then it would be the HDC being the bad guys when we weren't consulted on the language of the survey in the first place. So it was just sort of an ask to maybe work a little closer together. It was completely innocent, so I believe positive intent on that. But the result of that was Ryan asking David to join us and maybe just give a little overview of the work that's in progress. Is that a fair overview, David?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing the folks, so if when you make a comment, if you could move a little closer to the microphone, it would be helpful. And I apologize, I had a little technical issue with my computer, so I switched here to my phone. But yes, I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, good. So anything, we have the overview document, but anything you want to add context to or about?
Yes, absolutely. So as most of you are aware, we produce an initial report concerning the waterfront regulation assessment. And the total project is really 3 phases. And we're getting toward the end of the first phase. The initial phase is really us studying the project area, the current regulations and the master plan. So as a part of that, we prepared that first report, which includes a character assessment of the study area, a kind of a high level redevelopment and development potential, just so we can really assess how many lots are likely to be developed or redeveloped. I reviewed the master plan as it relates to the recommendations for the downtown area and the waterfront. And also, we're beginning in this report was the first look at the zoning code analysis. So we made some observations on the zoning code and some comparisons between districts. But in the next report, there'll be a full assessment of the zoning code and a summary of the public input. So as you're aware from the discussion earlier, there were 2 public surveys. We had about 300 responses on both surveys. The first was a visual preference study. So what I attempted to do in that study, in that assessment, was to pull a number of different types of architectural designs, different building siting, buildings of different scale and bulk and design. And the idea there was to try to find the trends that were most desirable from the people, from the perspectives of those taking the survey. And I have not crunched the numbers yet on the surveys, but I think some clear trends are certainly becoming apparent on kind of a more traditional type look of buildings rather than modern architecture. But that's going to be a part of my report that will come out for the end of next week. Also, there was a general study, survey concerning general issues and priorities for the waterfront area. And then we had a couple of boards, which I think a couple of them are right there in the boardroom there. But we had representatives of the Planning Commission, staff stations at various events, and in front of, I believe, City Hall and the post office, just to be able to get people more aware of the projects. There were some exercises on those boards that were kind of to give a taste of the surveys that are online. And we had the QR code and the web link on those boards so that people would be referred to the online survey. So right, as I said earlier, this is, toward the end of the initial study session. So I think this is a great opportunity to hear your input. Hopefully you had a chance to page through the report. Again, we are just trying to study the area, an idea of the folks' priority. And then from there, we'll be making recommendations concerning zoning changes. And initial recommendations will be offered to the Planning Commission at their August meeting. And then once we get the consensus of the Planning Commission on the direction we're heading with this, we'll write the final zoning language. There'll be official public hearing at the Planning Commission level, and then we'll move forward for City Council review and approval. So again, it's kind of a 3-step process. We're toward the end of the first step, and getting into the point where I'll begin to develop the recommendations for zoning changes. And I think it's a good point to consider the zoning ordinance and then the HDC guidelines as well. I don't think there's any intention to replicate any sort of any sort of material or requirements of the HDC. We want to make sure that we are not really looking at building architecture in the historic aspect, but we're looking at more of the placement of buildings, the scale, setbacks, land use, and other improvements around the buildings themselves. So when it gets to the specific elements that you review as a committee, I don't think we're going to address those specifically, but I think that there will be a little overlap here and there, which we'll certainly assess during the project.
I guess that's where I have a huge issue with this. You have a whole section in your setup about architecture. And in fact, in one of these sections, you say about the Ship and Shore that it has no significant architecture features. Or preliminary response to the survey is sort of like more traditional structures versus modern. And like, I guess as one commissioner, if I had been involved in that process with my HTC hat, I would have said, hey, zoning, I think you guys are about mass and scale and placement and setback. I don't think you're about asking people what they like in terms of architecture, because you're going to get a mixed bag of subjectivity. And like calling out the Ship and Shore as one thing, like that's pretty darn significant in our downtown, in our district. So I wouldn't categorize that as, has no significant architectural features. I just think it's really dangerous for us on down the road. I really applaud, I sound grumpy about it, but I applaud trying to engage everyone on sort of the use of the waterfront. And I think that's really smart. I just think this is going to be a hole to dig out of when everyone says what they like versus what fits.
Sure. I would respectfully disagree with your statement. We in zoning, we can look at building form and general elements that have to do with architecture, but we are not getting to the detail that you addressed during your meetings. You were certainly much more down into the weeds in the architectural in specifics of buildings.
You're breaking up a little.
Window design, siding, all sorts of very specific elements. Zoning codes, especially form-based zoning, does focus siting of buildings, but it also has to do with minimum and maximum heights, minimum, maximum width, the building as it relates to the width of the lot. the frontage and facade of buildings in terms of, the types of entryways and where the entryways are located. The, transparency of windows, fronting buildings. I don't know how deep we'll get into that, architectural requirements, but I don't think it'll be anywhere near the specificity at the HDC.
Yeah, I think we'll just disagree on that. I agree with everything about massing and setback and window placement and all of those things. I don't agree on if I need to go to every zoning meeting and weigh in on that decision in a historic district based on guidelines, I would think that our opinion on the materiality and the architecture, whether a modern building fits in a historic setting, is our decision, not zoning. It has nothing to do with the aesthetics, has everything to do with the massing. And we always defer to zoning and planning on those things that are not our purview. But I guess maybe just the takeaway is just please hear our concern as you continue the project. Because again, I think living in a subjective land in the public without a home base of what we're trying to accomplish or muddying it with aesthetics is a dangerous route for what we need to do. I appreciate the lift on this too. I know it's a lot of work to administer this kind of a survey.
Yes, and I certainly think that yes, and it's as we develop the recommendations, I don't know how deep we would get into architecture, if at all. It may be a part of it, it may not. The survey results may be very applicable to your work and your decision making as part of a future building review as well. So I think it would be very valuable for the HDC to review the results of the surveys, and maybe those are considerations that are more at the HDC level than planning commission. So I certainly agree that we need to make sure that there's we are recognizing the roles of the HDC and the planning commission, roles and responsibilities, and what type of what portion of site plan and building each board and committee are reviewing. So I think we'll be very conscious of that, and I would love to continue this coordination over the next 2 months.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I can see how the results of this would be super helpful. So thank you. Okay, anybody have any other questions? Thanks for taking time at the end of the day to jump on Zoom and chat with us.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Hope to see you again at maybe at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Administrative approvals are listed here. Does anyone have any question about any of those? Communication? No more public to have public comments? Any commissioner comments?
Just one, I support exactly what you said about that. And if somebody comes and wants to demo the River Deli, we're the ones that make that decision and recommendation, regardless of setbacks and anything else. And that's the train that we're gonna be running into here. Eventually, right? And our recommendations have power. I like you're recognizing. If somebody wants to put a 3-floor structure where the worm shop was, that's gonna be a hard, that violates our charter on the historic district guidelines.
Well, just like the development that was gonna go where the River Market not was gonna go, but was the
Townhomes
things
that
that
they proposed.
It was a
Yeah.
3-story.
I didn't
They
even,
weren't townhomes, it was like it was a hotel.
Oh, I thought it was
No, it was like,
massive.
it was like mini rooms kind of thing. And so they had, I don't know, do you remember how many rooms there was there? Like 50 rooms or something like, they had no parking for it either. That was the other.
Well, I guess the point is, before we even think about that,
Yeah.
I didn't even want to think about it because it goes to massing and scale and land use. That's a zoning and planning thing for me. Like, they need to go, whoa, that's way too big.
And they did.
They did,
Yeah.
well, they wanted all these variances. And that was the problem because that site is kind of goofy and the way that the lot is shaped. That with the setbacks, it's really difficult to build. Well, you can build, but you can't build what he wants.
So based on what David just said, if you follow that example all the way through, you brought that up. We had this conversation. They say no to the variances. You gotta stay this low, this wide. And they come back with a super slick, cold rolled steel glass and modern structure.
Right.
Based on what he just said and what we've been asking people. We did a survey and we said we wanted traditional.
Yeah.
And he just said what he said.
And the Chip and Shore is hugely significant.
It's-
Architecturally,
Yeah.
huge. It's huge. It's mid-century
fantastic.
architecture. It's fantastic.
So anyway, I think the intention is right. My point actually with Scott and with Ryan was around this issue, but it's also just, it's a bigger ask that we be included in some of these dialogues, in the work of the city where it affects us. I go back to the whole bandstand thing in Wicks Park. That if, maybe there was a way to sort of streamline that conversation. If we were involved a little bit on what that thing is and whether it's contributing or not, even if we had a vote on that. So my ask to them was like, I think this is really good work. I didn't mean to make it the poster child of inclusion, but it sort of was a doorway into, can we just be involved in these dialogues? Because I think it's important for us and we have an opinion about it.
The survey put out. I don't
Oh,
remember.
maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
How was it put out? I don't remember.
You should have received an email.
There was an email that
Are you on the city distribution?
Yeah,
stuff?
you get other things, but for whatever reason, I didn't see that. I'll look.
Did you get the short-term rental
Yeah.
one?
Got that.
But to finish up on the potentials, we all know that all the things that could happen. But my sense was, sitting on this board for a few years, the guidelines that we use are robust, they're thorough, they stand under scrutiny. And it's always been salted well through the leadership, Tim, you, and others that have been on this for longer than me, that it really makes this thing work. But there's gonna be some tough things coming. That you wanna feel like, we're empowered to continue to do what we've been doing. Reasonably, but there's big guys gonna be coming in here at some point. it
Yeah.
Feels like, that's what
It
scares
does
me.
feel like that.
That,
Which is why this data will be good.
Yeah,
To
it
have,
will.
I mean. We talk about it all the time. Coral Gables will get developed at some point, but the ask will be to develop it, either to tear it down or to refurbish it. And
Yeah.
having this data will be good for
yes.
that. But if I look down the comment section here of the work in progress, some of it to me is subjective.
All right, that's all I
Okay.
had.
The comment I wanted to make was, we have a new commissioner, Laura Godfrey is joining the commission. Laura is a HR professional, lives up on Francis Street.
Oh, I am.
Yes.
I know.
Lovely interview. I think she'll be well suited to join us and I think she'll be here at the next meeting. Good. Any other commissioner comments? If not, I don't know what I did with my agenda.
So actually, I don't know if this is everything, but there's errors on this.
In what way?
Well, for example, with the Water Street, Dockside Marketplace, there's only one owner there. It's got numerous tenants, but one owner. I don't know if you realize that.
It would be interesting to have another, this is completely like self-serving for us, but be interesting to look down this column on these properties and have a contributing, non-contributing. column.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. actually.
Needs an overlay, needs something to have people wake up and say, oh, there's a historic requirement here too. Most people don't know that.
Because actually, I think that Dockside Marketplace is a prime property for redevelopment.
Mhm.
It's got a nice rectangular shape, you know, and I mean, it'd be an easy one to redevelop. That building more than 50 years old? No, it says right here it was built in 1998.
Anybody, any other commissioner comments? I lost my agenda, however, I think the only thing to do was to adjourn.
Yes, I think that's it.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Second. All in favor, signify by saying yes?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sal.
How fun was that party?
Oh my God, amazing. So amazing.
He dragged me out right when I was getting ready to go in the pool.
Oh.
Yeah, John was like, I was
Like-
winding
Had
up.
you already stripped naked in the?
No,